Action cinema has always thrived on illusion. Flashes of gunfire, towering explosions, and moments of peril crafted to make audiences feel as though they're inches from danger. For decades, Hollywood has mastered the art of staging violence, layering it with smoke, sound, and choreography so precise that even the most chaotic scenes remain under strict control. Or so we're led to believe. But the polished facade hides another history, a darker, far more troubling lineage of productions that pushed beyond the boundaries of simulation. When ambition eclipsed caution, some filmmakers turned to real weaponry, real explosions, and real physical risk to chase a level of authenticity the screen had never seen. They dismissed rubber props, minimized special effects, and embraced the unpredictable force of genuine danger. And in doing so, they placed actors, stunt performers, and entire crews in situations where the threat wasn't imagined. It was immediate. It was physical. It was deadly. On these sets, bullets didn't always come from harmless blanks. Eruptions of flame didn't always follow the patterns their designers predicted. Metal shrapnel flew where it shouldn't. Machines malfunctioned under pressure and safety protocols buckled under the weight of ambition. The fear you see in the eyes of certain performers isn't the craft of acting. It's instinct sharpened by the realization that the situation has slipped beyond the comfortable realm of movie making. Some productions narrowly avoided catastrophe. Others paid the ultimate price. And Hollywood, reluctant to acknowledge the recklessness behind some of its most iconic scenes, quietly buried the details. Tonight, we reopen those shadows. We look at the films where realism was taken far too literally, where the pursuit of spectacle crossed into the territory of genuine hazard. These are the stories behind 15 Hollywood action movies that relied on real ammunition, real explosives, and real danger, and the chilling truths the industry hoped would remain forgotten. Fact 1. The Expendables. 3. What began as a meticulously planned stunt quickly spiraled into a real emergency on the set of The Expendables 3. Jason Statham, known for embracing physical risk, was behind the wheel of a heavily modified 3-ton truck meant to stop at a marked point before sliding into the water. In rehearsals, everything seemed under control. Timing was locked, safety crews were positioned, and the production believed they had crafted a moment of spectacle without flirting with genuine danger. But when cameras rolled for the actual take, Statham pressed the brake, and the pedal collapsed beneath his foot. The truck didn't slow, it accelerated. Panic rippled across the crew as the vehicle barreled past its intended mark and straight toward the edge of the dock. No safety diver was close enough to intervene. No one could shout loud enough or run fast enough to stop what was unfolding. The truck shot off the pier and plunged into the sea, dragging its driver down with it. Inside the cab, water surged in instantly, turning the interior into a steel trap. What saved him wasn't preparation from the production, but his past life as a competitive diver. Years of training surfaced in seconds. He forced open the door, swam through the rising darkness, and made it to the surface before the truck disappeared beneath the waves. Shaken crew members pulled him out, realizing how close they had come to witnessing a fatality. The moment was spoken of quietly afterward, edited differently than planned, but its impact remained. The pursuit of realism had come dangerously close to costing a life. And that wasn't the only time Hollywood's thirst for authenticity crossed a dangerous line. Fact 2. Rambo 3. By the time Rambo 3 began filming, the franchise had already built a reputation for overwhelming spectacle. But this installment took its commitment to realism far beyond accepted norms. Shooting in harsh, sun-scorched landscapes, the crew operated under conditions that made even routine stunts feel hazardous. What set this production apart, however, were the whispers later confirmed by several crew members that some wide-shot sequences involved actual ammunition. The rationale was predictable. Blanks couldn't replicate the visual punch the director wanted. But the consequences of that decision rippled through the entire shoot. Explosions detonated across open fields with only manual triggers to control their timing. Dust storms occasionally swept in, obscuring cues and making the blasts even harder to coordinate. Actors sprinting through these scenes found themselves dodging flying gravel, loose shrapnel, and concussive force that knocked more than one performer off balance. During a full-scale helicopter assault sequence, the intensity became overwhelming. As dozens of pyrotechnic charges erupted and the ground trembled beneath the cast's feet. One stuntman recalled being thrown sideways by a shockwave powerful enough to rattle his vision. Stallone himself described some artillery effects as feeling too real a sentiment that hinted at risks hidden beneath the film's muscular bravado. Ironically, much of the most dangerous footage never made it into the final cut. Editing choices trimmed entire beats of the chaos, leaving behind only fragments of what the cast and crew endured. The audience saw heightened action. The people on set lived through near misses. And still another production had pushed further back in 1969 on a film that reshaped the boundaries of cinematic violence. Fact 3. The Wild Bunch. Sam Peckinpah's The Wild Bunch is remembered for redefining screen violence, but the danger behind its imagery was far less controlled than viewers ever realized. Determined to capture brutality with unfiltered authenticity, Peckinpah authorized the use of live rounds in certain long-distance shots, a decision that placed his cast and crew in genuine jeopardy. The climactic shootout, infamous for its ferocity, was a logistical minefield. Thousands of squibs were wired across walls, props, and costumes, while clouds of dust and smoke drifted unpredictably through the courtyard. Wind gusts swept in without warning, disrupting the planned timing of charges and sending debris spiraling toward the cameras. Extras stumbled blindly through the haze, unsure whether the blasts erupting near them were firing correctly or misfiring dangerously. One particularly tense moment occurred when a stray ricochet struck a metal prop, sending fragments across the set. A camera operator dove behind equipment shaken enough to consider abandoning the shoot entirely. Peckinpah dismissed the close call, insisting chaos was essential to the film's realism. Actors later admitted that many of the emotions audiences praised, the panic, the trembling exhaustion, the stunned expressions, weren't crafted performances. They were real responses to an environment that felt more like a war zone than a film set. Hollywood eventually celebrated The Wild Bunch as a masterpiece. But beneath its legacy lies a truth the studio rarely acknowledged for brief but terrifying stretches. The production wasn't simulating violence. It was surviving it. Fact 4. Full Metal Jacket. Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket is often remembered for its precision and discipline. But behind the camera, one sequence unfolded with a level of volatility few anticipated. The production chose an abandoned industrial plant outside London, a maze of echoing tunnels and concrete ruins that transformed even small noises into thunder. When the pyrotechnic team proposed using amplified detonators to create the illusion of incoming rounds, Kubrick embraced the idea, then pushed for greater impact. The environment magnified everything. The blast of each charge slammed through the corridors, reverberating off the walls with bone-deep intensity. In the sniper sequence, small explosives were positioned behind debris piles and shattered pillars meant to simulate the violent crack of rounds hitting stone. Their combined force, however, created a sensory assault that left even the most seasoned crew members bracing. One mistimed detonation sent fragments of concrete skittering across the floor, catching a camera operator's arm and halting the take. Kubrick adjusted the choreography, but refused to scale back the intensity. He believed that the tension, the uncertainty would seep into every frame. The actors endured repeated takes inside clouds of smoke, their vision blurred and ears ringing. The fatigue and tension etched into their faces blended seamlessly with their performances, giving the scene a chilling realism that viewers still discuss today. But while this set was dangerous, another production pushed the interplay between chaos and realism even further, this time under the unrelenting heat of Moroccan streets. Fact 5. Black Hawk Down. Ridley Scott approached Black Hawk Down with a mission: create a cinematic experience that felt as unforgiving and disorienting as modern warfare. To achieve this, he built no artificial backlots. Instead, he transformed Moroccan streets into a sprawling battlefield populated with real Black Hawk helicopters, armored vehicles, soldiers, and pyrotechnics capable of shaking the ground. The helicopter sequences were especially perilous. During a sweeping pass over the main market set, smoke from ground explosions collided with the rotor wash, producing a dense vortex that blinded performers. A stuntman sprinting through the haze collided with a steel scaffold hidden in the smoke, fracturing ribs and sending shockwaves through the crew. The weapons used in the film were fitted with full-power blanks, their discharge echoing violently through narrow alleys. Even with ear protection, several crew members reported temporary hearing impairments. Vehicles barreled through corridors rigged with unpredictable detonations, and their tires kicked up debris with a force that left cuts and bruises on nearby performers. Scott believed that chaos, real chaos, was essential. He pushed forward with detonations so powerful they shook buildings outside the perimeter of the set. The result was breathtakingly immersive. But for those working behind the camera, the feeling was unmistakable. They were operating on a set where the line between simulation and real hazard grew faint. And yet another film would soon show how even controlled indoor environments could mask the most unexpected dangers. Fact 6. Die Hard. Die Hard brought its action into the confined spaces of a real corporate skyscraper. A choice that amplified the danger far beyond what the production anticipated. The Fox Plaza building became both stage and obstacle, its narrow corridors and rigid architecture intensifying every explosion and burst of gunfire. Bruce Willis experienced this firsthand. During a hallway shootout, a rifle loaded with blanks discharged only a few feet from his ear. The concussion reverberated violently against the walls, rupturing part of his eardrum and causing permanent hearing loss. Cast and crew quickly realized that filming indoors magnified the blast pressure in unpredictable and painful ways. Then there was the infamous glass scene. To make it convincing, the special effects team blended sugar glass with real laminated glass to catch the light more realistically. Running barefoot across the mix left Willis with multiple cuts, and the anguish visible in his performance was only partly scripted. But the rooftop sequence posed the gravest danger. When the explosion simulating the helicopter crash ignited, the shockwave rippled down the structure, shattering windows several floors below. Building staff reportedly panicked, believing a real emergency had occurred. These risks helped shape one of the most influential action films ever made. But behind its success lay a series of moments that revealed how easily a controlled production can drift toward genuine hazard. Fact 7. The Crow. The tragedy that occurred on the set of The Crow has lingered in Hollywood's collective memory, not because it was sensational, but because it was preventable. Brandon Lee, poised to carry the film with a breakthrough performance, stepped into what should have been a routine scene, one he had rehearsed countless times. The moment called for him to enter an apartment and be confronted by armed attackers. Nothing about it should have been dangerous. Yet, earlier that week, the same revolver had been fitted with dummy cartridges for close-up shots. One of these dummy rounds lodged a fragment inside the barrel, unnoticed by the crew. When the gun was later reloaded with blanks designed to create a powerful burst of pressure, it became a lethal weapon. No one on set realized the danger until the trigger was pulled. Lee collapsed instantly, and at first, those around him assumed he had delivered an especially convincing performance. But as seconds passed, and he remained still, the fiction dissolved. He had been struck by a real projectile, propelled by the force of the blank round. The set erupted into confusion and horror. The aftermath forced Hollywood to confront a truth it had long ignored. A single oversight, a single lapse in procedure turned a profit into a threat. The shot was discarded, and the film continued under a shadow. And the industry was left with a lesson written in irreversible laws. But The Crow wasn't the only film where danger emerged unexpectedly. Another production wove that danger into its very DNA. Fact 8. The Hurt Locker. Before The Hurt Locker swept through awards season, it was a demanding, high-stakes production unfolding under the punishing sun of Jordan. Director Kathryn Bigelow pushed for a level of realism that most modern war films shy away from, relying heavily on physical detonations rather than digital effects. She wanted every blast to feel raw, unpredictable, and immediate, and the actors experienced that unpredictability firsthand. Jeremy Renner, clad in a heavy bomb suit, approached a wired vehicle for a critical set piece. When the explosive beneath it ignited, the blast expanded with greater force than anyone anticipated. Renner was knocked backward, his breath driven out by the shock. His stumble, captured on camera, carries an authenticity no choreographed fall could match. Elsewhere, during the tense village shootout, one of the explosive rigs misfired. Debris flew toward lighting equipment, sending crews scrambling. A metal fragment missed a focus puller by inches. The production paused momentarily, but Bigelow insisted on maintaining the visceral energy that made the footage so compelling. Adding to the tension was the location itself, close enough to the Iraqi border that actual gunfire occasionally echoed in the distance. Cast and crew were constantly aware that the eerie soundtrack of conflict wasn't entirely manufactured. The result was a film as intense behind the scenes as it is on screen. Its realism forged in moments when control wavered and danger stepped closer than intended. But even these blasts paled next to what happened on a storm-battered beach in Ireland, where cinema collided with history's most violent day. Fact 9. Saving Private Ryan. Steven Spielberg approached the D-Day landing in Saving Private Ryan with a singular goal: recreate the terror, confusion, and brutality of Omaha Beach. In in a way no film had attempted before. To do this, he relied on an immense network of practical effects charges buried in the sand water cannons, simulating rounds tearing through the surf, and debris launchers designed to mimic the unpredictability of battlefield chaos. When filming commenced, the beach erupted into a maelstrom of sound and force. Explosions burst inches from actors' legs, scattering sand across the frame like shrapnel. Many performers stumbled, not because they were directed to, but because the concussive blasts hit harder than anticipated. One stunt performer was thrown onto his back when a charge detonated ahead of schedule. The water cannons added to the mayhem. Their pressure was so intense that extras were repeatedly knocked off balance and dragged by the retreating force of the artificial waves. A crew member later admitted that some takes bordered on unsafe, but Spielberg refused to blunt the intensity. He believed authenticity depended on immersion and capturing the sensory overload of combat, even if that meant walking the edge of risk. The result is one of cinema's most haunting sequences, praised for its rawness and emotional weight. But that realism came from moments where fiction and genuine danger intertwined more closely than anyone watching would ever suspect. And the next film in this chain of peril would take danger upward into the blades and turbulence of a low-flying helicopter. Fact 10. Terminator 2: Judgment Day. James Cameron has never shied away from pushing the limits of filmmaking, but Terminator 2 brought that instinct into a realm that even veteran stunt teams considered extreme. The film's iconic helicopter chase wasn't constructed with miniatures or digital trickery. It involved a functioning police helicopter flying shockingly close to the ground, weaving through an industrial corridor with almost no margin for error. Chuck Tamborough, the pilot entrusted with the sequence, balked when Cameron requested a flight path so low it felt reckless. Cameron, unmoved, insisted the scene needed the immediacy of real danger. Tamborough relented, and what happened next became film history. The helicopter dipped beneath an overpass, skimming so close that the concrete seemed to scrape its rotors. On either side, pyrotechnic blasts detonated with heat and force that rocked the aircraft into balance. Crew members watching nearby instinctively ducked for cover. Some were convinced they were seconds away from witnessing a catastrophic crash. The slightest miscalculation, a gust of wind, a delayed reaction, could have turned the stunt into tragedy. But the pilot held steady, delivering a shot that remains one of cinema's most electrifying moments. Cameron later acknowledged that no studio today would allow such a stunt, and no insurance company would approve it. Still, even this breathtaking sequence couldn't match the chaos of an action scene staged in the heart of a fully functioning city. Fact 11. Heat. Michael Mann's Heat is renowned for its meticulous realism, but the behind-the-scenes truth is that the film's legendary shootout was almost too real for comfort. Mann instructed his actors Robert De Niro, Val Kilmer, and others to maneuver and fire like trained professionals. To achieve the right sound and feel, the guns were loaded with full power blanks, unleashing deafening blasts that ricocheted down downtown Los Angeles streets. The echo was so violent, it rattled surrounding buildings, and residents called emergency services, believing a genuine firefight was underway. But noise was only part of the danger. The rapid bursts produced showers of hot debris, one of which burned through a crew member's clothing before extinguishing itself. In another moment, a squad car rigged to explode ignited prematurely after repeated muzzle flashes raised the temperature around the prop. Despite these hazards, Mann refused to move the shoot inside a soundstage. He wanted the acoustics of real buildings, real concrete, real city canyons. The result was a sequence that has since become a benchmark for cinematic action, and raw, brutal, and unnervingly authentic. Yet, as intense as Heat was, another film's battlefield would push unpredictability even further, blending smoke, sand horses, and explosive force into a volatile combination. Fact 12. Glory. Glory set out to honor the historical weight of the 54th Massachusetts Infantry, but in its quest for authenticity, production wandered into genuinely dangerous territory. The climactic assault on Fort Wagner required a sprawling battlefield constructed with buried pyrotechnic charges, smoke cannons, and breakaway structures, all timed manually by effects teams relying on visual cues rather than digital controls. During one take, a buried charge detonated earlier than anticipated. A wave of sandwood and debris blasted outward, catching several extras off guard. Two suffered concussions and were pulled off set for treatment. The chaos intensified, and the horses, already on edge from the concussive blasts, panicked. Several reared or bolted throwing riders and nearly trampling nearby performers. Smoke quickly filled the air, mixing with dust until visibility dropped to nearly zero. Actors trying to hit their mark stumbled blindly through the haze, drifting dangerously close to active explosive zones. The pyrotechnics team scrambled to adjust cues on the fly, working to avoid further injuries. The result was breathtaking on film, a visceral, harrowing battle sequence that conveyed the brutality of war. But the realism came from conditions that skirted the edge of control, leaving the physical reactions you see on screen. Fear, urgency, disorientation, rooted partly in genuine peril. And the next production would test that boundary in ways even more volatile. Fact 13, RoboCop. On the set of RoboCop, the mayhem unfolding in front of the camera was mirrored by the hazards lurking just behind it. Paul Verhoeven's vision demanded overwhelming force squibs detonating in rapid succession. Sparks bouncing off metal surfaces and pyrotechnics stacked in confined spaces that amplified every blast. The film's brutality wasn't simply staged. It was built on effects that carried their own element of real-world risk. The notorious ED-209 demonstration scene is the clearest example. The actor portraying the ill-fated executive was fitted with an extraordinary number of squibs packed so tightly that each explosion triggered a cascade of debris throughout the room. Verhoeven pushed for more explosions, more intensity, more chaos. When the sequence ignited chunks of plaster plastic and burning residue flew across the set, crew members flinched as sparks skirted dangerously close to equipment and exposed skin. Meanwhile, Peter Weller, sealed inside the suffocating RoboCop suit, had limited visibility and movement. During the warehouse shootout, he unknowingly stepped within inches of a live blast marker. When it erupted, the shockwave nearly toppled him, sending him stumbling toward jagged metal props. His armor prevented cuts, but the force of the blast bruised him through the suit. The rapid reset schedule only heightened the danger. Verhoeven pushed the team to move quickly sometimes before the pyrotechnics crew had finished checking their charges. Several technicians later admitted they operated in a constant state of tension, aware that a single misstep might trigger a real injury. It made for unforgettable cinema, but behind the scenes the production repeatedly edged toward peril. Still, the volatility of RoboCop paled next to the madness that engulfed a jungle production destined to become infamous. Fact 14, Apocalypse Now. Apocalypse Now became a legend long before its release. Not because of its story, but because of the chaos that consumed its creation. Filming in the Philippines plunged the production into a landscape of unpredictable weather, unstable terrain, and limited resources. Coppola, driven by a desire to capture the surreal disorientation of war, pushed forward even when the environment itself seemed to rebel. The helicopter attack sequence, now iconic, was orchestrated with real military aircraft piloted by active-duty soldiers, because the military was simultaneously engaged in conflict. Helicopters were sometimes pulled from the chute mid-take, forcing Coppola to improvise new formations. This instability made every aerial maneuver exponentially riskier. Below the choppers, the tree line was wired with massive fireballs intended to mimic napalm strikes. But sudden tropical winds turned these blasts into wild, unpredictable jets of fire. In one moment, caught on camera, a helicopter visibly wavered after a fireball veered dangerously close to its flight path. The pilot later admitted the heat wall nearly pushed the aircraft off balance. Then came the typhoon. It tore through the set, ripping apart structures, soaking explosive rigs, and scattering debris across the jungle. Many pyrotechnic devices became unstable, firing irregularly or failing entirely. Instead of halting production indefinitely, Coppola rebuilt and kept pushing. The result was a film saturated with dread and frenzy, its atmosphere shaped in part by conditions that placed cast and crew squarely in harm's way. But the final film on this list brought danger down from the skies and into the dirt beneath the actors' boots. Fact 15, Platoon. Oliver Stone approached Platoon with the intensity of someone who had lived the reality he sought to portray. Determined to recreate the exhaustion, confusion, and sensory strain of jungle combat, he immersed his cast in the punishing Philippine wilderness. But in blending environment, exhaustion, and practical effects, the production created conditions where danger often felt uncomfortably real. Explosive charges buried beneath the forest floor were designed to send dirt and bark flying in violent arcs. During one ambush sequence, a charge detonated harder than expected, launching a shard of wood into a stunt performer's gear. Another blast displaced by erosion overnight sent debris hurtling across Charlie Sheen's path as he crawled forward. The dense foliage posed its own threats. Visibility dropped so low that actors frequently drifted away from their intended marks and toward active blast points. Crew members had to intervene repeatedly to steer performers back from hazardous areas. Combined with fatigue from the immersive boot camp Stone imposed, the cast often reacted with genuine panic when explosions erupted too close. These authentic reactions, ragged breathing, frantic movement, wide-eyed alertness, filtered directly into the final cut, giving the film its raw emotional power. But those moments were shaped not only by performance, but by the real physical stakes unfolding around the actors. With Platoon, the pursuit of realism blurred into real-world danger, leaving behind a legacy defined as much by risk as by artistry. Bonus fact, The Last Hunter. Some productions dance near the edge of danger. The Last Hunter marched straight into it. This low-budget Vietnam War action film shot in the Philippines in 1980 operated far outside the safeguards of Hollywood. Without access to professional pyrotechnicians or regulated materials, the filmmakers leaned on leftover military ordnance and local demolition handlers, men who knew how to ignite real explosives, but not how to make them safe for cinema. One of the film's most alarming moments occurred during a river ambush scene. Insufficiently stabilized charges were planted beneath the muddy water, and when they detonated, their force far exceeded what the crew anticipated. A stunt boat carrying 3 performers flipped violently, throwing the actors into a surge of debris and shockwaves. They survived, but 2 emerged with burst eardrums and burns severe enough to halt filming for days. The danger escalated again during a hillside bombardment sequence. The mortars used were constructed from scavenged, improvised materials, unstable, unpredictable, and far too powerful. When one misfired, a torrent of dirt, wooden shards, and metal fragments tore across the set. The camera lens shattered instantly, and a lighting technician was struck in the shoulder by a splinter large enough to require surgical extraction. That chaotic moment captured accidentally found its way into the finished film because the crew knew it could never be replicated safely. And despite all this, the movie slipped quietly into obscurity. No major releases, no accolades, no cult following. Just a handful of memories from those who walked through explosions that belonged nowhere near a film set. For them, The Last Hunter wasn't just another action movie. It was a project where war refused to stay fictional. These stories reveal a side of Hollywood that rarely slips into the spotlight. The side where ambition overrides caution, where spectacle is built on moments that flirt uncomfortably with reality. Each film on this list carries its own shadow, a reminder that the quest for authenticity has sometimes steered productions into terrain no movie set should ever enter. Behind the explosions, the gunfire, and the breathtaking stunts are choices that brought real consequences to the people who stood in front of the camera. Now that you've seen how these worlds collided, illusion and danger, performance and survival, the question becomes yours. Which of these on-set moments do you find the most astonishing? Do you think the pursuit of realism justifies this level of risk, or does it cross a line no production should ever approach? Share your thoughts.